I'd like to call the Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021 special council meeting to order. Will you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Janice, could you call roll, please?
Councilmember Epperson?
Here.
Councilmember Comandon?
Present.
Vice Mayor Atman?
Here.
And Mayor Rhodes.
Here. And
Councilmember Ratten out tonight with an excuse.
okay, can I get approval of the agenda?
Move to approve.
Get a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on to closed session, we got 3 items. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiator, property APN 004-051-012, agency negotiator Michael Rock, interim city manager, negotiation parties Loretta Tillery and Helen Dennis. The second one is pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiator, property 17 East Main Street, APN 004-101-006, agency negotiator Michael Rock, interim city manager. And the third item is conference with labor negotiations pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, agency negotiators Michael Rock, interim city manager, and employee organization Ione Police Officers Association. Do we have any public comment on the closed session before we go into closed session? Looks like we have none, so we will go into closed session and we'll be back shortly.
Recording stopped.
Gary. All right, we're back from closed session. Information was received and direction was given. Can I get a motion to adjourn the special council meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Special meeting adjourned. Moving on to,
I should make a note that Councilman Ratten is here.
I was not at the
But
closed session.
you're at the closing now that you were here. I'll just make sure she was here for the closing.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well,
For the record. Okay.
okay. I'd like to call the Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021 City Council meeting to order. Janice, can you call roll, please?
Councilmember Epperson?
Here.
Councilmember Comandon?
Present.
Vice Mayor Atman?
Here.
Councilmember Ratten?
here,
And Mayor Rhodes.
Here. Would you like to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a approval of the agenda?
so moved.
Second. Second. First and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on to presentations, announcements, we have none. Moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment that is not on the agenda?
Yes.
I would like to know, I got something on the quarterly report I'd like to bring up, or if you are gonna pull it. I will wait to say it. If you aren't gonna pull it, I'll say what I need to say.
On the what, Larry?
On the quarterly
Wastewater plant.
monitoring report.
On the consent calendar?
It's on your consent calendar, yes, on the bottom. Okay, I guess I'll just read it then. Apparently the work, this is the introduction, apparently the work was never performed a year, so it has been conducted in those said quarters of this year. Other well was listed in the CDO, but they are either already been sampled or the wells are destroyed. The consultant was not made aware of this requirement until May of this year by the city mayor. This report includes data. I'd like to know who gives somebody permission to destroy test wells? Who's got the authority to do that? Anybody got an answer?
We will have someone get back to you on that.
That's against the law, they know, and they're all registered. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Yes,
Okay, we got someone on Zoom?
yes, that's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, state your name, please.
Sure, Greg Morris. I'm rising to speak on the comments recently made by the mayor and a discussion and conversation I had with the vice mayor. A number of the issues that the mayor raised in his article are existing and confusing, and there's very little communication that's effective between the city government and the constituents. The vice mayor suggested a couple of times, in meetings at least, that the city council have an open meeting with the voters, people in the city invited to speak, in which the issues raised by the mayor and a number of other people, hundreds of other people, can be discussed and answers can be received directly from the council. I would suggest to the council that the vice mayor's suggestion is very good, and that he ought to take, the city ought to take that up as quickly as possible. I know that's not going to happen, however, so what I'm going to suggest is that citizens get together and we'll meet, decide what questions we have and submit them in writing to the city council and to the, well, obviously to the newspaper, and see what kind of answers we get back. Communication is just really very poor, and everybody knows that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Barely made it, Custer.
Just barely. Thank you very much, Mayor. I don't know if anything has been said yet in connection with what we spoke about at the last session. The pipeline and walkway over the pipeline, just to the north of, by the creek there, north of, along West Marlette. And it's between the properties owned by the Frost family and the Tim Finch family. And looking back, I've done a little bit more research. I really hadn't been that aware of this particular issue. But after talking with the property owners, and I also shared with Andrea Bonham, and she did a little research for me. It's two water pipe that easement would be operated by Amador Water Agency.
Moral?
Yes.
It's actually sewage. They're
It's
sewage.
sewage?
They are sewage. Both of them.
Okay, well, what the report that I got
Where-
from Andrea was it
where
was
did
a
you
water
get it?
pipe.
Where did you get it? Who told you that?
Andrea Bonham.
This is public comment, you don't argue, just
Okay.
talk.
Anyway,
got
that's
3
what
minutes
I
left.
understood it to be, and if that's the case, then it would be the water agency. But, so what I would like to do, one of the issues here is that the property owner has been told that they need to pay for taking care of the tree. The tree that is a huge tree on the easement, and that is interfering with the power line that comes from PG&E to the Frost home. And that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous to expect the property owners to take care of that. PG&E should have done something about it before. So I think there should be some leadership on the basis of the city. The city can take some leadership with the water agency. I don't know whether it is, I've never heard that it was, I thought it was a sewer line as well. But if indeed it's a water line, and the water agency should be involved, also PG&E should be involved. And you should get with PG&E. It also is a city matter because there's water. If it is a water line, or if any of it is water line, there is a fire hydrant right there at the property edge. And the city has an interest in that. So you put this all together, and I'm just saying there should be some leadership. In the October 22nd.
You got 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. The mayor had a good article here about improvement that would be really, it would make a lot of difference for the city, in all the departments of the city, as well as the city council. And I really liked that report. So I think this is an opportunity for stronger leadership by the council. And I would like to suggest that at least one member, maybe two, of the council work on this particular issue with the property owners. Okay? With the Frost family and possibly Tim Fish family. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl.
This is public comment now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tom Quinn over on Arroyo Seco Street, 130 Arroyo Seco Street South, and I came here at the last meeting a couple weeks ago to ask about my ditch and the tree. Well, after that 9-inch rain the other time, the roots of that tree have literally picked up the concrete walkway. It's about a 10-foot long piece of concrete, so that it's really difficult to get the trash cans down there. And through all that rain, that ditch didn't accumulate any water, it all went down the street. I'm gonna ask again, would you please fix that ditch? You know, I'm kind of landlocked with my garbage cans there. And that tree really shouldn't be there, it's underneath the telephone pole. And it's not PG&E, I guess it's the phone company gets there. And they cut the tree branches out and throw it down on my ground, and then I have to cut them up and put them in my green can. That tree really needs to go. Would you guys please help me out with that ditch? It's not that expensive, you know, I mean, you just have to put a perforated pipe in there, cover it with pea gravel, some dirt, and it's good.
Earl, hush up. Continue, Donnie.
Okay. The
That
second,
wasn't polite.
It's not polite
Mayor?
for you when you're talking over the speaker.
That wasn't polite, Mayor.
okay, time out, this is my time. The second thing is, this is a proposal of mine. Hello.
Chief, get him out of here. Go ahead.
This is a proposal, has nothing to do with me. We have a fantastic fire department. We have a fantastic police department. We're really blessed that way. The fire department are all volunteers, and they do so much. They put on the parade for the kids at Christmas, you name it. And what we do is, we have a benefit for them, and the pizza thing, that's all great. But here's a proposal I have. Starting in 2022, at Christmas, I think we should give all of the volunteer fire department members a couple $100 and thank you for the hard work they do. I think that would be a really good thing to do, and it'd be piddly money compared to what we spend money on. So I think it would be a good idea to give the volunteer fire department members a couple bucks at Christmas. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. Any other public comment? Anyone on Zoom, Don? All right, close public comment. Moving on to the consent calendar. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull the warrants and actually, I just have a question on the warrants, and I'd like to pull the treasurer's reports because I have some questions on that.
You want to have a second to that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, so we'll move on to public hearing. We have none. So now we'll go back.
Yeah, we go back to the consent calendar.
She's pulled item 1.
So someone needs to make a motion to approve two.
Yes.
Correct. Ms. Clerk.
Someone want to make a motion to,
Make a motion to approve item number 2 on the consent calendar.
second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, public hearing, none, now, okay.
No, you gotta do one, don't we?
Item 1 now, right? Item 1. We approved it. Number 2 on the consent calendar. Item 1 is still open.
Okay,
We're just approving the consent
Okay.
calendar.
go ahead, what's your question?
Okay, question on the warrants. Will we be receiving warrants monthly from now on?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
The treasurer's report, we have a whole lot of money sitting around making very little interest, even though it is in Lake. Are we exploring any options of putting that into a higher interest-bearing program?
We have a brother with that, but I can talk with Mark, we can't tell that and see what we can do with it.
Okay, because, I mean, it's a whole lot of cash sitting there and making a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, there's, just so that it's clear to the council, there's certain funds that can be invested more aggressively than others, and a lot of what's in LAIF is not allowed to be invested in the Cantella investment fund that we have. For whatever reason that I'm still trying to figure out, LAIF is earning 0.22% right now, which is the lowest I've ever seen it in 30 years. So it will go back up, hopefully. But yes, we can certainly always look at alternatives, and the treasurer, it's really his thing here.
So do you know how much of that, what is it, 8 million or 10 million that is sitting there is restricted on investment?
Well, the general fund is the more restricted in terms of how you invest it. The enterprise funds have a little bit more wiggle room. We did transfer 3 million to LAIF. Not that that's like a big deal right now, but we'll look.
And are those funds eligible for other investment opportunities?
Not that I'm aware of, but Chris can certainly have some
We have to
latitude.
look into it
to
more.
look
Right
into
now,
that.
it's just in late because it's more secure and
Right,
some
and-
some sort of return.
Right,
that
better
one
return than a
October
checking
first.
account.
Right. And that actually, so in the quarterly.
Chris, can you
He's
grab
speaking
the
of the
mic?
microphone better.
Not that it's gone up a lot, but it's gone up to 0.24%, so it is moving, but slowly.
Okay. If in the next 3 to 6 months, we can identify some funds that can be moved, I would prefer to see them in a much higher interest-bearing account than what they're sitting in right now, if at all possible.
Well, I guess it depends on the council's comfort level with risk. So we could present to you what that risk would be and let you decide as a matter of policy how we invest our money.
That's a great idea.
Okay.
Those were similar questions I had. You know, you got $9 million sitting there. If we can invest it, that would be better than putting it in a checking account making nothing, or LAIF making almost nothing. You know, perhaps look at paying down some of the unfunded liabilities that we got, which are 7%. We're paying CalPERS 7%. You know, if we can afford, you know, $1 million, say, or whatever, for you know, for a period of time to invest. I mean, not all of it, but some of it in various places, whether it be LAIF or Cantella or CalPERS. I think it's good use of our funds. It's actually pleasant to see that large number in the bank, so, but I'd rather see it making money.
Means we pulled up the warrants, I'll bring up one thing. I'm still upset to me to no end that we're paying a company $600 to change light bulbs because our public works can't even change a light bulb. And the company's out of Oak Hill. And I don't know why we can't get a local contractor to change light bulbs if our public works can't even do it. I've wrote that on almost every check I signed.
I had one more question on Applied Concepts Inc.'s on the warrants. We paid $17,000 for message trailer CHP cannabis tax grant.
That's being reimbursed. It's the, basically, it's, Yeah, it's coming from the cannabis tax grant. It's a signboard for checkpoints.
Okay, so
for
it's a,
PD.
it's a pass-through
Yeah.
expense?
Right.
Okay,
I just submitted it to C.
okay, great, all right, thank you.
Any other discussion on that? All right, we'll close consent calendar. Public comment on consent calendar? No public comment on consent calendar. Public hearing? None?
I need to make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve item 1, the first quarter, July through September treasurer's report and the warrants.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Ayes have it.
And thank you to the department for putting that together. Appreciate it. Thank you,
Well
Chris.
presented, thank you.
Very good.
No public hearing. Regular agenda. Item 3, consider ratification of mayor's appointments of 5 members to the newly created special district committee.
Oh, sorry, I guess that's my item. As the council's aware, the ordinance was adopted to create a special districts committee. The ordinance is now, or almost in effect, I believe in a couple days. November 5th, it will take effect. And so this is a perfect opportunity for the council to create the committee. The council had requested that there be a 5-member committee as part of the ordinance, and that at least one of the committee members be in an area that is outside of any special district, and that we try to the best of our ability to have then the other 4 represent the different community facility districts that we have throughout the city. So the recommendation from staff is that these 5 members, Mike Evans, Steve Alviso, Roger Merritt, Beverly Livingston, and Gary Thomas, be appointed to the committee. This will be the only time that 5 members will be appointed all at once. As we move forward, we will stagger the reappointments so that you don't have an entire committee disappear at once. And they do represent, Gary represents a person outside of any special district, Beverly from CFD 2006-1, Roger from 2009-3, and Steve from 2005-2, and Mike also from 2005-2. So they do represent a good cross-section of the city, and if the council is amenable to this tonight, then we will schedule their first meeting soon. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. I didn't get into that level.
Which members will be 3, which members will be 2, to split for the rotation? One group will be for 1 year, one group for 2 years, or how they'll be? Sorry.
2 or 3? and then
2 members are for 2 years and 3 members are for 4 years, so we need to
Okay.
delineate that.
So that they're staggered, yes, correct.
Makes sense.
Okay, I thought that one was 2 and 3, they're 4s.
4 is.
Okay. I don't know if any of the individuals want to pick if they want to do it for 4, or?
It's Gary's hand too right now.
Peace, Gary.
Yeah, I would like to ask that from the appointees to see if they're willing to do it that long. I don't know if Gary will last 4 years, but I would hope so.
Gary said 2.
Gary pretty clearly said 2.
How would we go about that?
Well, I would say.
I'm just gonna appoint them to.
It's up to you.
It's up to the council. The mayor, this is the mayor's appointment, so you can decide, and the council can ratify your decision.
Obviously, if Gary's back there waving 2 fingers, I would say that's a pretty simple one, that he will only be appointed for the 2-year term to begin with. And if
Was it, sorry, 4 for
2 get appointed for 2 years,
3 for 4?
3 get appointed for 4 years, that's 2.64020.
Am I allowed to ask them up individually to see what they would?
Sure.
Okay. Gary, could you please step up? I don't know if all of them are here or maybe on Zoom,
I would recommend that, since we do have 2 from the same district, that one of those is the 2 and one is the 4.
but that's the other thing I was gonna ask. Do we have all the districts covered, or are we overlapping on them?
first two are the same, are in the same district.
Right. We have 3 different districts covered, plus a non-district covered. So we have, most of the city is covered.
Go ahead, Gary.
Gary Thomas, 125 Maple Street, as a citizen today. I kind of understand a little bit of the historical perspective. That's why I kind of volunteered to get on. I realize that maybe a lot of people here don't really understand how this came to be on some of the special districts. The LLMD is its own animal. There's the Mello-Roos and so forth. But some of the other district that, for the police and so forth like that, we had a couple grants back when I was on city council, and we had the Universal and we had the Cops More grant, and one of them, when it was nearing its end, we couldn't lay off, and we were gonna have to fully fund where we got grants for Cops More or Cops Universal. I don't remember which one was which. So here's this ingenious way to fund police going forward. And there it was, so we, the city manager, or city administrator at that time, I believe, went and talked to some of the developers and so forth like that. And it was agreed that it'd be about a $400, so that's my recollection, it was around $400 to help fund police and so forth into the future. So that's kind of how I recollect it.
So how many years you want? You can give them the history of it when you're on there.
I'll take 2.
2?
I
Okay.
have a lot going on, so I figured I might be able to be helpful to get it going and so
Yeah.
forth. So.
Thank you, Gary. We got anyone else in the audience? Is Mike Evans here?
Yep. Hi, I'm Mike Evans. I live in Ione. I've been willing to be on it for 4 years, but just the way I'm thinking is that the committee meets and we formulate a policy, say that I'm just, throwing this out here, that the committee can all agree to. And then, if the council enacts it, then would there be a need to continue, beyond the 4 years or 2 years or whatever? So, that's just the way I'm thinking right now. I don't know, what you guys have in mind.
Now, we'll put you down for 4, and then we'll see what
Okay,
happens.
yeah, that's fine. All right, let's see what happens.
Thank you. Is Steve
Okay.
Alviso here? There he is. How can I miss him? It's kind of tiny.
So I'm Steve Alviso, 398 Callaway Lane here in Ione. Thanks for considering me for this. I'm honored and privileged to be a part of this, be a part of the community as much as I can. And yeah, I'm all for the police, fire, and everything that this supposed money's going for, but I'd sure like to see how it's gonna be allocated and go through and all that. So I was willing to do 4, but you're looking for one of Mike and I to do 2 and the other to do 4, I guess? Okay, I'll do the 2, Mike will do the 4.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Stacy, I will say that a 2-year term doesn't prevent you from reappointing them. It's just
Right,
so you
right.
stagger
Sure,
them in the future.
Yeah. Okay, is Roger here? There you go.
Roger Merritt, I live on Vista in Ione, and thank you for this opportunity. I think it's a great idea, and I'll volunteer for 4 if there's a 4-year, as long as I'm still alive. I've never been here, so
We'll keep you alive.
I'll volunteer for 4 if there's one available.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Beverly Livingston. Is she on Zoom? Okay.
She gets 4.
Okay, she gets 4.
She gets 8. If you're not here, you get the worst one. You get to be the chair.
Okay. With that said, that we open up public comment. Open up to public comment. Any public comment on this? Close public comment. Someone want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we ratify the mayor's appointments of the 5 members to the newly created Special Districts Committee.
Second.
Would you include
Yeah, we need to-
their names?
Yeah.
Mike Evans, 4 years, Steve Alviso for 2 years, Roger Merritt, 4 years, Beverly Livingston, 4 years, and Gary Thomas, 2 years.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to update on cleaning of creek.
So that item was requested by the mayor to be on a future agenda item, and the future is here. So I don't have a specific staff report. We talked about it a little bit under, I think, public comments last time, 2 weeks ago. And the status report on the creek is that part of it was cleaned. And then a lot of the volunteers ended up fighting fires, and we lost the labor force. And they were gone a long time, and then it rained. And we still need permission from property owners to do certain parts of the creek that the city does not own, and I believe that's underway. And that because of the state fish and game permitting requirements, we probably have to wait until next year to do the type of cleaning that is needed. That's my understanding at this point.
Well, there was supposed to be, the creek bed bottom was supposed to have been pushed up to the levee from the bridge all the way to the dairy hole, and that was actually in the motion of getting done, and then we lost our past city manager. And then when Michael Rock came in, he was informed that I was doing this with no permit, no nothing, was actually not true, and we figured that out later that it wasn't true. So that threw a whole monkey wrench in the whole thing. That creek should have been completely dug out and the levees repaired by now from the bridge to the dairy hole. So what I think is gonna happen now, and you're correct, now the water's in it, you're kind of done. We gotta wait until it completely dries out again, and hopefully it does. This permit's good for 5 years. So, and our chair is back there in the corner if he wants to get up and maybe give a little update also, because he knows a lot of this also. There's probably some things I'm forgetting.
Stephen Frederick, I'm your Creek Committee Chairman, also General Manager of Jacksonville Irrigation District. Got a little history there. Quick update, kind of batting off of what Mr. Rock said and Mr. Rhodes. I think we have plenty of time to get back in there in the creek. I know Mr. Rhodes' goal is to clean out the gravel itself. That's a process. Can't do it with water in the creek. I think if anybody saw what those storms did here last week, it's a blessing to have the creek cleaned. I see a little bit of trash down there, but you know, I guess that's going to end up in stock. Not much we can do about it. But we made an effort at the beginning with some volunteers, and then we reached out to CAL FIRE, and before the fire season, they actually put a crew in there and really did some damage, or not damage, but did some heavy working and cleaned the creek basically from the dairy hole, which is right up here for nobody that knows, on Arroyo Seco, all the way down to the bridge and a little bit past the bridge. The problem that we have is once you get down past the bridge and past the grocery store, the property owners start owning to the center of the creek. And there's a little bit of a jurisdiction issue of who's responsible, is the property owner responsible? But it's pretty clear that the city of Ione, from the dairy hole down past the grocery store, and basically, if you really look at it, there's some levees that were built by the Army Corps of Engineers, and there was a lot of questioning on when it says 000 APN on a map, who's responsible? Well, I think that everybody kind of agreed that it's probably the city's responsibility. But you know, we're going to be reaching out, probably starting in the spring, going into the summer next year, reaching out with some letters to those homeowners, looking into more of the jurisdictional issues of who's responsible. We've talked to the Fish and Game. Fish and Game does believe that we have the right to go in there and clean it, but we just have to make sure we go through it through the right process. So I know there's a lot of legal stuff with, well, there's big trees on my property, but it floated down from my neighbor's property, and we really have to figure out how to make things happen without causing legal issues. So the Creek Committee, for people that are listening and don't really understand what it is, it's not just cleaning up the creek. There's we've been directed by the city council to look at other issues which we really haven't had time to look into. You know, there's storm drain issues. And we really took the creek cleaning as our main goal to begin with, and now that it's rained, I think the creek committee was successful in what they wanted to do this year. So we'll look at cleaning the creek. And that is actually some heavy equipment, most likely getting in there, bulldozers, that sort of thing, and reshaping the bed of the creek, so. If anybody has any questions?
Yeah, a couple of things. I know, I think the mayor mentioned earlier that the gravel, is it removed, pushed out? Years ago, they used to haul it out, but I think it's just pushed up. Is that what? the
Well,
permit
it's
allows?
ironic, you know, I was very young, but it was my grandfather that voluntarily used to do it.
Yeah.
And from the stories I've heard is he pushed the gravel up onto the levees and removed some of the gravel. The city does have the opportunity of, through this stream alteration agreement, to sell the gravel. So it's your gravel. If you want to go mine for gold through it, go mine for gold.
There's gold in there, I can tell you.
But, so I don't know what the strategy will be. You know, we'll work with the fishing game and figure out what the best approach of pushing that gravel up onto the levees is the best approach. But what occurred leading up to this was, probably a lot of people don't know because it's underneath the bridge, the pilings itself were being eroded from the 2017 storms, and nobody touched it. The vegetation grew up, nobody saw it, and it was actually, I think, Stacy and I that just wandered down there and go, oh boy, we got a problem. We reached out to Caltrans immediately, and if you remember here early summer, Caltrans was actually painting the bridge and doing some work. Well, they were actually repairing one of their footings in preparation for this year's storms. And you know, we already saw a wallop of a storm of 7 inches, and it filled that creek up 3/4 of the way. I'm sure if we don't fix that erosion problem and work with Caltrans, it's just gonna keep eroding that piling on that bridge. But the dairy hole, you know, back 20, 30 years ago was, Stacy always tells me, 20 feet deep. You know, you can jump in it. Now it's full of gravel. And it's gonna cause problems for the city if we get another, say, storm like we did in 17. You know, this one was a one-hit storm. If you get 3 of those stacked up, which is not uncommon come springtime, if anybody remembers in 17, we were about 4 inches from going over into the parking lot of the grocery store.
And a follow-up question, does the permit, is there any emergency provisions? I know last time we fixed a bunch of stuff downstream because it was emergency. Is that part of it?
There's always emergency provisions
Okay.
with the fishing game.
Very good. Okay.
You can go in there and actually tell them later, you know, they do like a phone call, but through the creek committee, we've reached out to our local fishing game officer, and one of our first meetings, we invited him to the meeting and asked him questions. And the contact that we have down in Sacramento, he's been very helpful. And I think this isn't one of those cases where they're fighting us.
Right.
They're really encouraging us to, and help us. And we've talked with the Army Corps of Engineers. They've looked back in their records about the levees. So, you know, it's just big government process. It's slow.
Is that piling, is that an emergency situation, do you think, or is that something?
I think Caltrans thought it was because they jumped in there.
That's what I'm asking right now, if it still is something we can get down in there?
No, it's already taken care of.
Well, that's taken care of.
Keep monitoring it.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that it was still kind of a lingering issue.
Well, what happened is they got a permit. See, Caltrans had to get a permit to do what they did from the Fish and Wildlife. And they gave them what, 50 feet above stream,
Right.
what they could do.
So we took advantage of that and made them
So-
move the creek 50 feet up.
Yeah, they went up 50 feet from the bridge
Okay.
to the east. But what happened, if you look in that creek, you can see there's a channel. Well, with big storms, that channel's just gonna go right back to where they already fixed it. If we don't go up and start changing the channel from all the way up.
That's what I'm asking, I guess. Okay,
And,
thank you.
you know, there's some eroded areas on this side of the creek behind the Mexican food restaurant and everything that, what we've been directed by, and we reached out even to the Department of Water Resources. And the Department of Water Resources was more than helpful, came up, walked with Stacy and I, and they suggested cutting the trees, 3-4 foot tall, but don't rip the roots out of the bank. So, you know, there's things that, and this isn't one of those cases where we should be scared of getting in there. And you know, you're protecting the city. Granted, if we have a flood that you can't help, there's nothing the city can do, but at least be proactive. And that's kind of our mentality on the creek committee, where we want to be proactive. So at least we tried to do something.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was getting bad, you know, it sat there for 15, 20 years, and I think it looks a lot better. I hear a lot of comments from people saying, you know, it's nice to see water flowing through the creek, but unfortunately, we got a little trash out there that came down with the last storm. Any other questions?
I got a couple. First of all, thank you, Creek Committee. You did a great job this year. Can we expedite the permits instead of waiting until the spring to ask the property owners? Can we?
We already had them.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
No, permits from the landowners.
Okay, so I don't know if that'll be
Whatever.
I think it's gonna, what you're gonna run into is you're gonna have property owners, some property owners will want you to access the property. I would be one that said, yeah, get in there, take care of it. But there is already property owners, I don't know them specifically, but I've heard waves
Sure.
that don't want us in touching their property. So I don't know how we're gonna get around that. Do you go up to their property line, jump over them, and then keep going?
It's basically what Fish and Game said to do, and then they're liable for anything that happens.
Yeah.
That's how they do it.
So,
That would make the most sense.
Yeah, I would just try and get permission sooner rather than later, so in the spring
We
can
started
get
a
going.
list of all the AP, me and Janice were working on it, we have all the AP
So,
numbers and all the.
what I envision, Dominic, is we reach out to them here, say, February, March, springtime, when the water's still coming down the creek, saying we'd like to move forward on cleaning the creek, and this is the next step. And it might be, I'll work with Mr. Rock, some type of agreement that they sign and we sign. Apparently, there was one in the past, back in the 90s, that people signed, and, talk to the attorney and make sure we do it right. But I would kind of suggest, if you run into a roadblock, skip them.
I think we gotta get done what we can get done. I think that's just the wise thing to do. If they don't wanna be part of the process.
Yeah,
that's-
don't make don't make that property owner problem to fix 90% of the problem.
Sure. And then last question, what's your backup for volunteers? Like if CAL FIRE, they get reassigned next year, can we get a pool of other people other than CAL FIRE in case they do get reassigned or?
Well, we'll have to talk because this removing of the gravel, that's almost a bid project.
Right.
And who's gonna pay for it? That's the city of Ione. Are you gonna find a volunteer like my grandfather? How are you gonna go about that? So to cut down I don't wanna, the volunteers that went down there at the beginning of the Creek Committee, they didn't, I think most of them got wore out in about 4 hours.
It's great to have the firefighters do it, young men and women are out there physically fit can do it. So another resource is the state also owns California Conservation Corps. That's always looking for this kind of work to come in and do. And I may have one other one that I can reach out to through the National Guard. We got one called Task Force Rattlesnake that goes in and does a lot of this stuff. And they do mostly clearing fire fuel, but this might also fall in their lane because it's disaster prevention. So but California Conservation Corps might be another resource to reach out to.
So CAL FIRE was really good. They had actually a mobile chipper that they put down there on tracks, and it was an all-terrain deal. And they kind of went through there pretty quick. And I really say we try to be good friends with them and keep that relationship going. And it's gonna get easier and easier, if you wanted to do this every couple of years, instead of cutting trees down that are 24 inches, they're gonna be 1 inch and they'll blow right through it.
Well, like you said, it's a 5-year permit, right, Stacy?
Yeah, and we can continue it.
So we get to one end and we just go back and start at the beginning again, right?
Right.
It's just a
The
continue.
city had one going for years, and I don't know when it was, 15
I
years
think-
ago, they dropped it.
The big hurdle we had with the Creek Committee was reforming that relationship with Fish and Game.
Yep.
And as long as either the Creek Committee, the city council, the management here keeps that relationship with this Ian, I think you guys are golden to keep doing what you're doing.
Ian's even, they reached out to Sutter Creek and Jackson Boats reached out to me, and I gave them Ian's number, and they're like impressed with him. It's like a guy from Fish and Game, that's actually helpful. Yes.
I guess the guy who manages the reservoir and deals with them all.
Yeah.
You have to find those agents of change, right?
Any other questions? Right now we're a little slow. I think we've canceled our last couple meetings. It was really tough through COVID to have Creek Committee meetings, but we'll pick it up come spring. And, we did what we could this year. It was pretty low budget.
Did a great job.
So.
Yeah, much thanks, we appreciate
Here's the other thing that I would like to bring up to the council. We've been directed to do a lot of things. We've got a list when we all joined up. If there's a priority that you want us to look at, let us know. Because right now it's just clean the creek. Okay, that was fun. But if you want us to start looking at the storm drains, well, that all came up in this last storm. I don't know what we could do for you guys, as in, but give us some work, give us some direction. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, with that said, do we have any public comment on it?
Gary Thomas, 125 Maple Street, which borders the creek. I was on the creek committee in '97 when we had a lot more water than 2017. And we hauled the gravel off and were attempted to get sued, the city, by someone in Spring Creek. So we found out we had the right to remove the gravel in Spring Creek. So that lawsuit became null and void. But we also we took the gravel out from, on that bend, that long sweeping bend down there, and removed that over to where Poppy Lane now is. So we had a short haul process, but we actually contracted, we got permission with FEMA understood it, Fish and Game gave us the permission to go in there, and then we short hauled the gravel up to Poppy Lane was right there. And that's all gone away now, so from the dairy hole up to my place is still have trees and vegetation and next year's gravel. Guess what? So the likely place for a good project is to remove the gravel and the trees and short haul it across the road to Amador Ranch where nobody lives. So that might be a good project there as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Any other public comment?
I'm glad you guys looked into this. I still got connections, and I went and got a copy of the drawing of the downtown flooding area. And last weekend, I believe, if this would have been done in July, which it was supposed to have been done, we wouldn't have had any flooding. That's my opinion. And the engineers looked at this. And I'd like to know why it was pulled, and I never seen it. I think that should have been a vote of the council. Somebody should have just pulled that. And I was told what was pulled. So I'd like that known. And the other thing I'd like to bring up, the creek committee really, because you're gonna accept Village 8A and 8B, I would like everybody on the creek committee to walk that creek behind those houses. We're gonna accept that, and I've got pictures of it. There's 8-foot, there's 30-foot trees laying in the creek that are 3 foot in diameter, right in Mule Creek. There's widowmakers there hanging in another tree. That place is a disaster, and we're gonna set this. I mean, it's unreal. You just need somebody to go to walk it. Nobody's checked it, and we're gonna accept this land. This is where the park area is. Goes all the way, I think, believe from 104, all the way down to the end of the, where those houses are built in Village 8 and 8B. You guys ought to take a look at that. It's a disaster. We're gonna pay dearly for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yes, Colin Frost, 1129 West Smollett Street. I'm representing the father, and I'd like to bring to the attention regarding the creek, the sewage or water bridge. I was always told it was sewage coming from the new development north of Marlette. I watched when those pipes were put in, and the flooding that occurred in '97 that was previously mentioned was partially due to that bridge. Perry Earl put that bridge in when he built those houses, and he did it on a budget, and he cut corners, and that bridge is bent. Those I-beams are bent because of that flooding. Several tons of driftwood were dumped on top of that bridge in the walkway, mounded by the time the flooding was over and the waters receded. Not only did our property get majorly flooded, but the properties across the street belonging to Mr. Tim Smith, and who's right across from us, Bonnie Dufresne, she was majorly flooded. The parcel behind her now was also flooded, even though no one was living there at the time, it wasn't developed. That entire field had several, well, I don't know how you'd measure it in gallons of water, but it was heavily flooded. We now have foundation issues in a couple of parts of our house because of the flooding in the corners, out front and in the middle. And this is basically because of that bridge being built at least 3 feet below flood stage. One of the issues that was mentioned before was trees coming down the creek. That added to the whole issue as well. One of the trees actually came uprooted, a huge pine tree, and that had already been cut down. But it was the length of it was so long, the root ball actually floated and it drugged the rest of the trunk, wedged in the corner, and it wedged into the I-beam of the bridge and the corner of the creek on the north side of the creek. And that also, I'm sure, constricted the flow majorly and added to the flood issue. Not only our property was flooded, like I said, the other properties across the creek, which are actually lower than the road, water was flowing over the road.
You got 1 minute left.
Thank you. And then, of course, Gold's property next door was flooded. And they've since replaced their foundation on the house next door to us. So it adds to, and I don't know if it had any issue, there'd have to be someone to look at it to see if it actually caused more flooding on the corner of Marlette. But there was flooding at the time that was quite deep right there on the corner. So I'd like this addressed somehow. I'm sure the council would need to be involved with that along with the creek committee, because it's going to consider major work and money put into raising that bridge, so flooding doesn't happen again as a result of that bridge next time there's a flood stage superstorm. You know, we've had, since we've lived here, I think 3 or 4.
10 seconds.
3 or 4 flood stage type storms, and that was before the bridge was there.
Time's
So,
up.
it'll happen again. I'd like this looked into, and our family would greatly appreciate it.
There you go.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Anyone on Zoom? No?
This will be really quick, Mayor. Well, I really appreciate two parties. One, the Creek Committee and everything that was shared. I really think that they're making a real effort to, for a difficult problem that's existed for years with the Sutter Creek. So I commend you and the committee on that. The other is, I commend property owners that have had to deal with problems like Larry Rhodes has mentioned over the years. And I really commend them, and in some cases, patience for several years that these things have not been taken care of. The other thing, I wanted to take this opportunity to apologize for a minute. I overreacted to something misunderstood from the mayor, so I apologize, Mayor, in that connection. And I do feel that this is something that the council could really take an advantage of this time with the report from the Creek Committee to take care of some of the issues that I mentioned with respect to the easement and the tree that's causing the obnoxious problem with the PG&E lines. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Earl. Anyone on Zoom? No? Or close public comment on the creek. Moving on to,
Actually, I have a question or a request. Can we get some definitive on that bridge? Who owns it and what's in it?
sure.
I didn't have that reported back at the next council meeting.
Okay.
As part of your management report.
Sure.
Okay, item 5, cancellation of January 4th, 2022 city council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Typically, the council has canceled that meeting in the past. A lot of our staff will be on vacation the last week of December, which is when we would normally put together this agenda packet. And we're requesting the meeting be canceled, and we'll make sure that all important matters get to you before and or after that meeting date.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
Yep. I open up the public comment. Open up comment. Close public comment. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we move to cancel the January 4th, 2022 city council meeting.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, moving on to reports and communication from city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. A couple of items. We do have some recruitments underway for a maintenance worker, an administrative analyst, a building inspector / code enforcement officer. The deadline to apply for the maintenance worker 1 and the administrative analyst is November 19th, and the deadline to apply for the code enforcement building inspector position is November 30th. The police department is creating a list for a police officer. The process to hire a police officer in the state of California can take a year or more. We need to have a list that is certified so that if we have a vacancy, we can immediately hire rather than wait to have someone go through the academy, do their background check, their psychological test, and a number of other, of course, the interview process. So this is just a way in which to make sure that we have people readily available to hire. There is no open position that is currently being recruited. I did a ride-along today with the fire chief. It was unscheduled, but I was there. And I was very happy to be on the call and would also like to schedule a ride-along with the police department. I will talk to the police chief about that. Also looking, the last item is looking for direction from the city council regarding a town hall meeting. I know we've talked about this a few times. I would like to schedule one in the next this is a bad time of the year, but either now or at the very beginning of next year. I have a couple of agenda items to suggest to the city council. And one that keeps popping up and people have asked me about is what does the city want to do, or what would the city like to see at the Preston Youth Correctional Facility property if it were to be bought and developed. And I do think that that is an important question for the community. It's 120 acres. There's hundreds of thousands of square feet of office space, and a gymnasium and a theater, and it's really a tremendous asset to the city, or could be. And there are interested parties that are responding to the RFP from the state. So that could be one possible item. I would also like to spend a little bit of time talking about how residential, or I would say residents and businesses, how their tax dollars are collected. What does that mean? What is the revenue stream that is collected? How much is actually goes to the city versus the county and the state and special districts and other groups? And then how is that money spent, which is the expenditure side, and we definitely talk about that when we do the budget process. But there does seem to be a lot of misunderstanding about how money can be spent, whether it's general fund or enterprise funds, and why can't you just spend money to fix my street? Well, I wish it were that simple, but it isn't. So that could be another potential item, and then just an open session where we allow actual public comments and a back and forth where we can respond to those public comments outside of a business meeting that's very structured as we have tonight. So those are just my thoughts. Would love to craft an agenda with all of you, and of course we would want to ask the public what their top priorities are for the city and get a sense of what's working for them and what isn't. What services are they happy with? Some of the services are contracted out, and I'd certainly like feedback about our garbage company, for example, which is a contracted service, but also services we provide directly. So all of that could be covered in a town hall meeting. Probably better to do it in January or February, just based on the weather and schedules and all of that. And would love to continue to work with you on how to craft that agenda so that we could have a productive meeting. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, moving on to council comments, committee reports, and future agenda items. Let's start with you, Dan.
Yes, the wastewater committee met and we moved along some items that we'll be addressing shortly. It's kind of, I think it's probably a fair enough.
Yeah, I think they should be on the next
The next
agenda.
agenda. Yeah. And one other thing too, Business Committee Association, relatively active group in the city, they're donating $500 for the small dog park. We'll get ready to go with that, so I'll let you know about that.
Dominic?
We had LAFCO meeting last week. LAFCO's looking at finalizing the fire districts, and we had a public hearing where the city fire departments went and put their input in, and that was a pretty good meeting. I'd like to see the town hall thing done. Yeah, now it's a little too close to the holidays, but I think that's important that we do the town hall thing. If we can do that, you know, maybe second week in January, just get it on the schedule. I think that a lot of the issues that come up here, the miscommunication, could be dealt with at that meeting. I think it's a really good thing to do. So I'm glad that that's on the radar. Wish we could do it sooner rather than later, but I'd like to see that done by the end of January. What's the, you know, the procedure for, like someone comes in and says they got a problem with a tree or a ditch? We've had that in the last, you know, couple of meetings. Like maybe that could not be at the town hall meeting, but at the next meeting, it's like, so what's the procedure? When someone comes in and says, okay, I got a problem with a tree, or I got a problem with a ditch, you know, who do they go to? It would be kind of nice if that was spelled out. You know, do they go to Public Works? Do they call Michael Rock? Do they get a hold of their council person? I mean, what is it that they do? Because we keep hearing that, you know, we don't do anything. Last week we heard that we canceled the Creek Committee, which now, thanks to the report from the Creek Committee, that wasn't the case. So we just got to get better communication out. And, you know, when you have a problem with a bridge, you know, how come that wasn't dealt with in '97 under FEMA when that's when all the funds are available? But just things like that. So when you do have an issue, you know, what's the right person you go to?
Just to touch on that, so you know, there was someone that had a tree in the creek behind their house. They did call Public Works. Public Works told them it's their responsibility. They have to get it out.
Right.
So, you know, which is incorrect.
Well,
That's what happened.
well, wait a minute. So it depends who owns the property. That's the first thing. If the property is private and the tree is on private property, then it is the responsibility of the private property owner to maintain their tree. It's part of their property. They maintain their house, to maintain all of their property. The city cannot legally help them. That would be a gift of public funds. We cannot do that. It's not that we don't want to, it's not that we, you know, there's no other reason other than we can't. If it's a public right-of-way, or if the city owns a parcel, then absolutely that is our responsibility. And we have to, like any property owner, maintain our property. If there's a question, if we don't know who owns the property or it's unclear, then I would start with Public Works, because they typically know. They are out in the street every day. They pretty much know who owns what. And if they don't know, the next step would be to come to me so that I can actually work through the assessor parcel maps and try to determine who owns the property. That to me would be the best process, and that's what we've tried to use since I've been here.
Thanks.
Anything else, Dominic?
That's it. No, just, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, just town hall meeting, it's a great idea. Just going quickly through my calendar and head, probably end of January works pretty good. yeah, trying to get it done before the holidays, and then just too many things going on next month with travel for me personally. That's it.
The town hall, when does the RFP for Preston closes in January?
Yeah, I believe it does, I think the middle of the month.
Middle of the month. So if we're going to take, do we have any information on who has put in anything? Are they providing us with any information at all?
No. No, I mean, I just have people that have called me and commercial real estate brokers have called me and developers have called me, so there is interest. I don't know whether they've submitted a formal proposal. The state has had this out there for over a year, so I wouldn't hold my breath that they get any proposals that they actually accept. So it's
Their
gonna be a
prices.
tough process.
Okay, so I was just concerned that with it closing and then them making a decision before we even get to have a town hall.
No, I don't
would
think they
be-
will. Yeah,
Okay,
no.
all right. Then mid-January, mid to end of January is great, and I think, again, sooner rather than later.
Okay, I know they're working on the general plan, but I just want to make sure, because I kind of saw the draft, that the creek is being removed out of it, and the creek, I went to many meetings with FEMA and OES, and the creek is the biggest threat to the city of Ione, and there was money set aside in part of the general plan to make sure that was on there, and I will send you the document. That's one that Larry keeps talking about, that's 96 pages long, and it was pulled out of there. That needs to be made sure that it's left in there. Like I said, I spent tons of time with OES, me and Kenny Mackey did, and John Hankin up at the county working on that, so I want to make sure that's in there. And the other thing is, I still don't like the fact that we are hiring an inspector and a public works person when we have a job description that says there's supposed to be a public works person that is the inspector. And I don't think it's right we're hiring two people to do the job. When in our job descriptions, there's supposed to be one person doing that. So that's just a comment I'd like to put on the record. Other than that, I have no other agenda items or committee reports. So we'll move on to the last item, closed session. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 of section 54956.9 of Government Code, one case. Any public comment on closed session? We have none. We're going into closed session for a couple of minutes and we will be back. You can stick around or go home.
I don't have a comment on closed session, just some information.
You can't speak. You can talk to us after the meeting if you want.
Does this actually what Roseville did? Roseville won 400,